You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
But more specifically, to my fellow Nets fans, because Sean Marks did it! He did it! He pulled off one of the biggest trades in NBA history. James Harden, a future Hall of Famer, a top 3 or top 5 player in the NBA today, is now a Brooklyn Net. Something that I was calling for weeks, for months. It's actually happened. In case you couldn't tell, this is the Jacob Valk Show, and I am your humble host, Jacob Valk. And I am over the moon about this trade, in case you couldn't tell. The life of a Nets fan for a long time, really since the Vince Carter trade, maybe even a little further back since the second NBA Finals loss, has been one of disappointment. You're told constantly that no one cares about your team. Your team's irrelevant. No one cares about the Nets. Knicks fans don't even pay attention to them. Vince Carter doesn't even get him into the conference finals. 12-70. Losing out on John Wall. The Billy King era. Rebuilding from that hell. In the span of 5 years, Sean Marks turned this franchise around from laughingstock to title contender. In fact, I'll even go a step further. The best day in a Nets fan's life before June 30th, 2019 may have been May 4th, 2014, when the Nets beat the Raptors in the first round. That was the Pearson Garnett year. It may have been when they traded for Joe Johnson. It may have been when they traded for Deron Williams. It may have been when they convinced him to resign. None of those guys can hold a candle to the events of June 30th, 2019, the clean sweep, and January 13th, 2021, when Sean Marks did the impossible and traded for James Harden. In less than 2 years, Marks has given this fan base days that no one thought was possible. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know I could be happier as a Nets fan than I was on June 30th, 2019. I thought I'd have to wait for them to win the NBA Finals for that to happen. Yesterday, I was over the moon. I mean, I'll tell you my day leading up to the Shams bomb that Harden was going to the Nets. And I'm pretty sure he had it first. I'm pretty sure he had it before Woj, Stein, Chris Haynes, all those guys. So, give Shams credit. If I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure Shams had it first. The news came out that because of Harden's post-game comments on Tuesday, that the Rockets were gonna send him home. Don't bother showing up, we're gonna trade you, you're gonna get your way. So initially it seemed like it was gonna happen before the weekend. Then you start hearing rumblings that it could even be sooner than that. It could happen today. Today meaning yesterday. And you heard the Nets and Sixers as the finalists. Now at this point, I'm checking Twitter constantly. I refreshed Twitter more yesterday than I think I ever have in my life. Because I wanted to know the second Harden was traded. Whether it was to the Nets or the Sixers, I wanted to know. But I also had to go to Men's Warehouse. Believe it or not, I actually had to pick up a suit. So I turned on Chris Russo. He'll announce when the trade is happening, and he's the best afternoon drive host there is on radio. Nothing happens. I walk from my car to Men's Warehouse. And I'm talking to the salesman. I tell him, hey, this is my name. I'm picking up a suit. Can you get it for me? In the time that it took me to walk from my car to when the salesman went in the back to get my suit, that's when I found out James Harden was traded. So here I am in the middle of a Men's Warehouse. I'm literally jumping up and down. I'm literally pumping my fists in the air. I'm not kidding. I was over the moon. But I can't scream at the top of my lungs. Can I celebrate? Yes, but I kind of have to do it in a subdued way. The salesman gets me my suit and he says, why don't you try it on? I tried it on, and here I am in the dressing room of a Men's Warehouse, punching the air, jumping up and down. I was so happy. My buddy Mark called me, screamed into the phone, James Harden's a Brooklyn Net! Told him I couldn't talk. I'm in a Men's Warehouse. I went to see my father at work. It was the end of the day, no one was there, my father was staying late, so I knew I could do it. And I'm giving him the biggest bear hug I've ever given him. Driving home, talking to Mark, we're going nuts about the trade, we can't believe it. My mom opens the door for me. Now, she's not a big basketball fan. I gave her the biggest bear hug anyone's ever given anyone, ran her around the house, and she said, Jacob, I don't even know what happened. What are you talking about? James Harden's a Brooklyn Net! Oh, okay, that's good, sweetie. I mean, I'll tell you, I texted people who I haven't texted in months, if not years. Had to gloat. Again, the life of a Nets fan, you're told your team isn't going to get anyone. No one cares. You root for the little brother. Not anymore. For time immemorial, the Brooklyn Nets are the kings of New York basketball. The Knicks have never, ever had as talented of a roster as this one. Even when they were winning championships in the 70s, the guys who they won with, Reed, DeBusschere, Bradley, Frazier, etc., etc., those guys weren't as talented as Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. This is by far and away the best roster in the NBA. It's not even close. You want to tell me the Lakers? All due respect to the Lakers, incredibly talented team. They're the best team in the NBA right now. They're not as good. Is LeBron better than Durant? Yes, I'll give you that. But I'll take James Harden over Anthony Davis. I'll take Kyrie Irving over Montrezl Harrell. I'll take Joe Harris over Dennis Schroeder. Everyone's saying that this basically guarantees that the Nets are going to win the East. It does more than that. It basically guarantees that they're going to win an NBA title. Who do you see beating this team? The Clippers have a big 2. They don't have a big 3. The Bucks? You think the Bucks can give them a run for their money in the Eastern Conference Finals? Okay, let's run with that. Giannis is better than Durant. Harden's better than Middleton. And Irving's better than Holiday. And Harris is better than whoever you want to say is the Bucks' fourth banana. The Celtics? Not even close. Kevin Durant and James Harden are both better than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. As for Kemba Walker, you have no idea how he's going to come back from his injury. I mean, the thing is, the Nets and Celtics are both missing their point guards. And God only knows when Kyrie Irving is going to come back. I think the notion that he's done with basketball is ridiculous. He's got a lot of money coming to him. This is the best opportunity he's had to win since the Warriors blew a 3-1. Is it upsetting that he's not playing? Yes. God only knows when you're going to see him again, but A, you will see him again at some point, and B, the Nets can tread water without him. For God's sake, they have Kevin Durant and James Harden. I mean, that was a notion I saw. This kinda deflects from the bad publicity the Nets have had. No Kyrie. The Nets are underachieving. The sky is falling. So they felt compelled to trade for James Harden. That's not what this was. This was a good basketball move. When you have the opportunity to acquire a player like James Harden, you do it. You just do. This makes the Nets exponentially better. For God's sake, they now have 3 of the 20 best players in the NBA. This is one of the best big 3s in NBA history. Okay, fine. It's a big 2 right now. I get that. You're gonna see Kyrie again, okay? Use your noodle. You will. I don't know when you're gonna see him, but he'll come back at some point. Sean Marks said today that he was in contact with Kyrie when the trade was coming closer to fruition. He didn't say anything about Kyrie saying he wants to retire. He didn't say he's gonna run for mayor. Kyrie's coming back. I don't know when. I can't give you an answer as to when. But he's gonna come back. And to put him with Kevin Durant and James Harden, you'd be an idiot not to salivate over that. I mean, I will say, I've seen a lot of people kill this trade from the Nets end of things. Kevin Pelton of ESPN killed it. Evan Roberts on WFAN yesterday was going nuts. Jerry Recco didn't like it either. I just don't understand why they're upset. They just saw their team trade for James Harden. Not Jrue Holiday. Not Bradley Beal. Not a second option. James Harden. Can't you be happy for once? I mean, my God. Alright, look. I'll address their concerns. Obviously, their biggest gripe is everything the Nets gave up. They gave up a king's ransom. They gave up control of all their first rounders for the next 7 years, 4 pick swaps, 3 trades outright. Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, and Rodion Kurucs. Prince and Kurucs are expendable. Alright, Kurucs was barely playing. Prince is a solid player. He's not bad, he's not great, but he's overpaid. You can move on from him. That's fine. No one has an issue with that. The things that people have an issue with are the King's ransom of picks, Jared Allen, and Karis LeVert. I'll attack the LeVert end first. LeVert has had a really good season so far. 18.5 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, 6 assists per game. Really, really talented player. Here's the thing, though. For the most part, with the exception of opening night against the Warriors, all of LeVert's great performances have been without Durant or without Kyrie. The Grizzlies game, where he dropped 28. No Durant and no Kyrie. The Jazz game, no Durant. After that, no Kyrie. With them in the lineup, LeVert has been a schmagegi for the most part. He's been getting 10 points a game. You want to talk about a guy not fitting in with stars? You question the fit of Durant, Harden, and Irving? I'd question the fit of Durant, Irving, and LeVert. LeVert just wasn't playing well with these guys. Is that because his minutes were down a little bit? Maybe, but you'd still expect him to get more than 10 points a game. If you're talking about a guy who you're pointing to as being able to be the third musketeer on a championship-winning team, you've got to do more than getting 10 points in 20 minutes. Jared Allen was the guy who Evan Roberts was really upset to see go. He was upset about the picks too, but he was really upset about Jared Allen. There's no question that Jared Allen has taken a major step forward this year. He took a leap that I don't think anyone saw coming. I mean, there were some games where he was the third best player on the Nets. Double-double threat every night, played great interior defense, looked head and shoulders better than DeAndre Jordan. I understand that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was thinking about it as the Harden trade grew closer and closer. Do I really want to trade Jared Allen? Could the Nets have done this with, say, Spencer Dinwiddie? Losing Allen is tough, but it's not an insurmountable loss. I mean, let me ask you this. You're starting a team from scratch tomorrow. You have a choice. You can have James Harden or Jared Allen. Who are you taking? Your answer better be James Harden. To get a transcendent talent like James Harden, you've got to give up talented players. You're not going to get him for scrubs. I mean, even when the Rockets lost all their leverage, they sent Harden home. They admitted they lost. Harden ripped the team on Tuesday night. Absolutely ripped them. The Rockets were cooked. They were still getting offers of gobs and gobs of draft picks and a guy like Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle. The Nets weren't going to be handed James Harden on a silver platter. You want that? Wait until free agency. Try to find a way to do some cap gymnastics so you can maybe convince him to sign. In a perfect world, would the Nets have given up Jared Allen? No. But the reality is, for a guy like James Harden, you do it. It's not like they traded Jared Allen for a scrub, a guy who's never going to play, just a schmagegi reserve. We're talking about a former MVP here. We're talking about a guy who, even though he looks like Mark Henry, is still putting up 25 points per game. 10.5 assists per game. And I promise you, now that he's in a place he wants to be, he's gonna get back in shape. Yeah, he was letting himself go in Houston. He was doing everything possible to force his way out of Houston. Now that he's gone, he's gonna get back in shape. He just is. Give him some respect, please. As for the rim protection that you're losing with Allen, the rebounding that you're losing with Allen, first up, the rebounding, you're not going to lose much, if anything. DeAndre Jordan is a really good rebounder. You look at his stats, they're not that impressive, but trust me, he's still getting it done on the glass. Yesterday, he got 12 rebounds in 28 minutes. He nearly had a double-double. And he was going up against a solid Knicks frontcourt, Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle. Randle could be an all-star. Mitchell Robinson is one of the best young centers in the NBA. My buddy Eric said that he thinks it's possible that Tom Thibodeau could try to convince the Knicks to make a win-now move that would involve them trading Mitchell Robinson. That would be the dumbest thing on earth for the Knicks to do. You're finally on an upward trajectory. You're finally building the right way. Now you're going to try another quick fix that you know is going to fail? Eric wasn't advocating it. Give him credit. He was just saying it was possible. And I can't say it's impossible. But Eric and I both agree that it would be a stupid decision because Robinson has the makings of being a really good center in this league for a long time. And Julius Randle could be an all-star. DeAndre Jordan got 12 rebounds off those guys yesterday. He'll be fine. Reggie Perry has shown glimpses of being a really good rebounder. He was a really good rebounder at Mississippi State. I mean, what this trade does is it opens up minutes for a guy like Perry. He's going to be the backup center. I'm all for it. Let's see what he could do. I raved about the Nets being able to get Reggie Perry with one of the last picks in the draft. I think he'll be fine. Nick Claxton, when he comes back, he's a solid player. I don't know when he's coming back, but he'll be fine. And the rim protection, DeAndre Jordan is a former all-defensive player in this league. He's not as good defensively as Jared Allen, but he's not bad. He's really not. He's not the player that he once was, but he's not bad. The guy had 2 blocks yesterday. He's averaging over a block a game. He's fine. He really is. But now on to the big one. The picks that they gave up. The Nets gave up the maximum number of picks that they could give up. In the NBA, you can only trade picks from a maximum of 7 years. So, right now, the Nets couldn't trade their 2028 first rounder. Now, some Nets fans had flashbacks to the Pierce and Garnett trade. If you don't remember, the Nets gave up 3 first-rounders and the right to swap. It set the Nets back for a while. There's no question that that was a terrible trade for the Nets. Did the Celtics hit on those picks? What do they really have to show for it? The furthest they've gotten with Brown and Tatum is an Eastern Conference Finals exit against LeBron James's Cavs in 2018, where they lost in 7 games. I'm not saying it was a good trade for the Nets. It wasn't. But it didn't turn the Celtics into a dynasty. But it still set the Nets back. There's no question that Nets fans still have PTSD over that trade. That's the worst moment in franchise history. Here's the thing, though. It's a false equivalency. The Celtics trade involved a 36-year-old Paul Pierce a 37-year-old Kevin Garnett and a 36-year-old Jason Terry. All of those guys were way past their primes, shells of their former selves. Believe me, I watched all their games. You had to look on the back of their jersey to see if it was really them. I mean, Pierce was solid, but Garnett really wasn't, and Terry really wasn't. The best thing that happened with Garnett was that the Nets were able to trade him for Thaddeus Young. Young was really good for the Nets. And if you want to go further down the rabbit hole, Young was later traded for the pick that ultimately became Karis LeVert. So you actually can draw a parallel between these two trades. It's like how some people draw a parallel from Bobby Bonilla to David Wright. You can do that here. But again, it's a false equivalency. James Harden is 31 years old. He is putting up 25 points per game. Something that Pierce hadn't done since the 06-07 season. Something that Kevin Garnett has never done. Something that Jason Terry has never done. James Harden is a former MVP. Right now, he is one of the 5 best players in the NBA. When the Nets traded for Pierce, that wasn't true. When the Nets traded for Garnett, that wasn't true. If you can't see the difference between trading for 3 players that were over the age of 35 versus trading for 1 player who is still one of the 5 best players in the NBA, and he's been there for years. A guy in Harden who's only 31 years old. I can't help you. It's just a false equivalency. There's no other term for it. This is a roster that had the ability to add a 3rd star. And I never thought for a minute that they wouldn't. Even when it looked like James Harden was going to be a Sixer. And thank God he isn't, because I didn't want to go up against him. Harden, Curry, Green, Harris, and Embiid, that beats the Nets. There's no way around it. That's an added benefit to this trade. You kept him away from the Sixers. But this goes back to the PTSD point. Any trade that the Nets made involving multiple draft picks and getting a star in return was going to send shivers down some spines. And I understand that. But here's the thing. Draft picks are pieces of paper. That's all they are. We have no idea where those picks are going to be. We have no idea who's going to be available. We have no idea if the guy who gets picked with that pick ends up being any good. You're talking about these draft picks like they're guaranteed to produce the next LeBron James. They're not. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee that the 2021 pick and the 2022 pick aren't going to be any good. They're going to be low picks. As for what happens beyond that, I don't know. There's no question that the future is hazy. God only knows if Durant's going to re-sign. God only knows if Harden's going to re-sign. God only knows if Kyrie's going to resign. There's no question that in order for this trade to really work, the Nets need to win. But that's a risk you take. And it would have been true anyway, even if this trade never happened. Pairing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and not seeing them win an NBA title would have left a really bad taste in a lot of Nets fans' mouths. That was the profound point that some people made after the Nets fired Atkinson. Oh, well, now they really need to win. Of course. Yes, that's a correct statement, but it would have been true anyway. When you pair Kevin Durant with Kyrie Irving, you expect to win. Again, this trade increases the pressure on them winning. They've got to win sooner rather than later. There's no question. But that would have been true anyway. And that's also assuming that these three guys don't re-sign with the Nets. Look at what just happened with Anthony Davis. The Lakers made a huge trade, a blockbuster trade. They mortgaged their future. No Lonzo, no Josh Hart, no Brandon Ingram, no 4th overall pick. And they gave up 3 other first-rounders for a guy in Davis who was on the last year of his contract. The Lakers had no assurance whatsoever that he was going to re-sign with them when they made that trade. You know why they did it? Because they had LeBron James. Because they knew that doing that trade gave them a better chance of winning. Look at what just happened. Anthony Davis wins an NBA title with LeBron and just signed a mammoth 5-year extension. Giannis just re-signed. Paul George just re-signed. The window is small right now, but it can increase. Durant, Harden, and Kyrie are going to be good until they stop playing basketball. You know, I'll say this. The stuff about them not being able to play together, Durant's going to want the ball too much, Harden's going to want the ball too much, Kyrie's going to want the ball too much, and it's going to cause a lot of friction. It's a legitimate concern. But we saw how that played out with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. They found a way to work together. They won 2 NBA titles together. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. Who's going to take the last shot? How are they going to distribute those shots? All that nonsense. They won 2 NBA titles together. LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love. They won an NBA title together. Stars find a way to make these pairings work. These guys know each other. These guys have played on Olympic teams together. Sean Marks said that the 3 guys aren't concerned about usage rate. They're just concerned about winning. The reality is, if they win, there's no issue. Winning cures everything. If they lose, yeah, there's going to be friction. It's tough to lose regardless, but I don't see this team losing. Before the season, I picked this team to win the NBA championship. Now, with James Harden in tow, I'm doubling down on that. There is no question that this trade gives the Nets an infinitely better chance to win multiple NBA titles. Look, it's okay to be upset that you're not going to see Caris LeVert anymore. It's okay to be upset that you're not going to see Jared Allen anymore. And it's okay if you want to root against whoever is taken with those 7 Nets picks. LeVert and Allen were integral parts of what Sean Marks built here in Brooklyn. An excellent culture. A culture that led to them getting Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The prize duo of 2019. It's okay if you liked watching them play. I liked watching them play. Caris LeVert was the answer to a really good trivia question. Out of all the players to spend their entire professional basketball career in North America with the Nets franchise, who has the most points? The answer was Caris LeVert. You know who was second? Jared Allen. For whatever it's worth, the answer to that question now is a name that's going to make every Nets fan listening go, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy." Josh Boone. Taken with the 23rd overall pick in 2006. Spent 4 years with the Nets. He was a power forward for the most part. Averaged 5 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. He really wasn't that good. But he's the answer to the question, who scored the most points out of any player to spend their entire professional basketball career in North America with the Nets franchise? It's okay to want that to still be LeVert. You saw this guy grow for 5 years. You saw him grow into a player who some people said could be the 3rd best player on a championship winner. Now, I wasn't one of those people, but some people said that. And Jared Allen's one of the best young centers in the NBA. Remember when he blocked LeBron James? It's okay to be upset that those guys are gone. But the reality is, the culture that they helped build begets win-now moves. D'Angelo Russell was part of that culture. The Nets got rid of him when they got Durant and Kyrie. I got news for you. Russell's better than LeVert and Allen put together. DeMare Carroll was part of that a little bit. He's gone. Jared Dudley was part of that a little bit. He's gone. Kenny Atkinson was a big part of that. He's gone. Once you build that foundation, that you have a solid culture, that naturally leads to win-now moves. Now, there is one more loose end to tie up when it comes to the Nets, and I promise I'll get to the other 3 teams. The biggest hole that the Nets had prior to this trade was perimeter defense. Did they have some good defenders? Yes. Jared Allen, really good. DeAndre Jordan, solid. Reggie Perry should be solid. Nick Claxton should be solid. Kevin Durant, really good. Bruce Brown, really good. But the Nets did need more. There's no question. Watch the games. They were getting torched from beyond the arc, nonstop. What this trade did for the Nets was it opened up 3 roster spots. Now, one of those will probably be used on Reggie Perry. Maybe Chiozza, but probably Perry. Perry's a little more important than Chiozza right now. But the other 2, I think they're going to fill through free agency. And these are the guys I want, and they're really good perimeter defenders. They fit the Nets perfectly. The first guy is someone who I never wanted to go. When Wilson Chandler came back from his suspension and the Nets waived this guy, I was ticked off. I couldn't believe that they chose to waive this guy. And that's Iman Schumper. A guy who's close with Kyrie. They used to play together in Cleveland. Played really good defense with the Nets. Endeared himself to the fans. My buddy Mark has been calling for him for a while. I 100% agree with him. Get Iman Schumper back. The second guy may confuse you a little bit. But if you stop and think about it, I think it makes perfect sense. Michael Kidd Gilchrist. The guy was born in Philly, moved to New Jersey when he was really young. Maybe he grew up rooting for the Nets. I actually don't know, but they were his local team. Look, we all know Kidd Gilchrist's crazy shooting motion. I mean, it's something that I'm trying to emulate right now. It looks like I'm voguing. But I don't need him to score. I don't care if he only puts up 2 points a game. I want him to play good defense. And Michael Kidd Gilchrist is a really good defender. He's always been a really good defender. Terrible with the ball in his hands, but the Nets don't need anyone who's good with the ball in his hands anymore. They need strong defenders. Michael Kidd Gilchrist is a strong defender. Okay. I think that's it for the Nets end of things. I guess I'll go to the Rockets now. I had called on the Rockets to trade Harden a while ago. I thought that they should just rip the Band-Aid off, take the best offer you could get, and move on. The situation was going to become untenable very quickly. And I thought that would lessen their leverage. It really didn't. The Rockets got a fantastic haul. 7 first-rounders from the Nets. The Bucks' first-rounder in 2022 that the Cavs gave them. Rodion Kurucs, Dante Exum, and Victor Oladipo. That is a fantastic haul. If you're a Rockets fan, be upset that you traded James Harden. That's fine. But you got a sensational haul for him. Rodion Kurucs has talent. He's never been able to stay in a rotation consistently, but look, I've seen every game this kid has played. I promise you, he's solid. Very good offensively. Not that great defensively, but that's something you can work on. He's 22 years old. Play him. See if he can improve. It wouldn't stun me if he turned into a solid rotation player down the line. But the reality is he was expendable for the Nets. Dante Exum was kinda surprising. I guess the Cavs just needed to open a roster spot. I mean, Exum's hurt. He's gonna miss a month or two with a strained right calf. And he's not a great backup point guard. He had all the potential in the world once upon a time, but it's not there anymore. That was surprising to see him in the deal. Victor Oladipo is an interesting get for the Rockets. You want to talk about filling Harden's shoes? Oladipo's not as good offensively as Harden, but defensively he is. Think about this starting lineup for a minute. John Wall, Oladipo, PJ Tucker, Christian Wood, and DeMarcus Cousins. That's a solid starting lineup. You got the offense in Wall, the defense in Oladipo. I mean, Oladipo can score too. He's averaging 20 points per game this year. You pair him with PJ Tucker, though, on the defensive end, my God. He is a free agent at the end of this year, so God only knows if he's going to re-sign or not. The Rockets will be able to offer him the best contract, but if he's not a good fit in Houston, the Rockets can let him walk. I mean, I'll say this, Oladipo's better than LeVert. The fact that the Rockets were able to flip LeVert for Oladipo, that's really impressive. I mean, it makes sense that the Pacers would want to move on from Oladipo. You had a sense that he wasn't going to re-sign in Indiana. And LeVert is signed through the 22-23 season. And you can put LeVert in that Pacers rotation seamlessly. Again, think about the starting five. Brogdon, LeVert, Warren, when he comes back, Sabonis, and Turner. The Pacers got a little worse. LeVert isn't as good as Oladipo, but they did gain some long-term stability. You don't have to worry about is he going to re-sign or is he not going to re-sign. And I like the idea of that starting lineup. LeVert's not going to need to sacrifice as many shots. Will he still have to yield some shots to guys like Brogdon, Warren, and Sabonis? Absolutely. But LeVert will get more shots as a Pacer than he ever would have gotten with the Nets with Durant and Kyrie playing with him. And for the Cavaliers, this makes perfect sense. The Cavaliers like to have a dominant low-post center. They went out and traded for Andre Drummond a year ago. Drummond's a free agent. You don't know if he's going to re-sign. Kevin Love isn't getting any younger. I love the idea of Allen in Cleveland. I think he's going to work in J.B. Bickerstaff's system. It'll be interesting to see how they make all those pieces work when everyone comes back, because Love is out right now, Drummond's out right now. You've got a lot of mouths to feed in the front court. Drummond, Allen, JaVale McGee, Love, and Larry Nance Jr. But the reality is, you cross that bridge when you get there. And Drummond and McGee are going to be free agents anyway at the end of this year. Nance is going to be on an expiring contract. Allen's going to be a restricted free agent also, so you have the flexibility to make it work. I mean, I'll say this. A starting five of Garland, Sexton, Okoro, Love, and Allen? That's not bad. And Taurean Prince is a solid bench player. Again, overpaid, but can get the job done. His efficiency has gone up. His three-point efficiency has gone up. He's better from the free throw line than he's ever been. Prince will be fine in Cleveland. All in all, this trade really makes sense for all sides. The Nets got their big three. It's one of the best big threes in NBA history. The Rockets got a king's ransom for a guy who wanted nothing more than to get out of Houston. The Pacers gained some long-term stability while not losing too much in terms of talent. And the Cavaliers added one of the best young centers in the NBA and just so happened to run a system where the center is used a lot. This trade made sense for all four teams. The Nets just won it more because they got the best player in the deal in James Harden. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. And Urban Meyer is going to go to Jacksonville. He is closing in on a contract with them to be their next head coach, according to Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network. We don't know how long the contract is for. We don't know how much money he's getting. But give the Jaguars a ton of credit. They were linked to Urban Meyer all throughout this process. You knew it was going to be tough to lure him away from his Fox job and being around college football. But the Jaguars just added one of the best college football coaches in recent history. The coach of 3 national champions. A guy who's 12-3 in bowl games. A guy with a career record of 187-32. The Jaguars haven't given their fans too much to be excited about recently. Jacksonville isn't that far from Gainesville. I think it's a fair bet to say that there's a sizable portion of Jaguars fans that are Gators fans, remember how great Urban Meyer was there, and they may have even gone to Florida while Meyer was there. This is a fantastic move. Meyer's one of the brightest football minds you'll ever meet. This isn't a schmageggy head coach like Cliff Kingsbury or Matt Rule coming from the college ranks with a reputation of being a supposed offensive guru. Urban Meyer is a football guru. He's a future college football Hall of Famer. yes, his time at OSU ended a lot uglier than it should have. His time at Florida ended uglier than it should have, but for different reasons. Florida was more for football reasons. OSU was because he knew of spousal abuse allegations against one of his assistant coaches, Zach Smith. I mean, I gotta be honest with you, I never blamed Meyer for that. He knew about allegations. He didn't know if it was true or not. I'm not saying he did everything he should have. He could have handled it better. But there is such a thing as due process. And the reality is, Urban Meyer isn't responsible for another grown man's actions. Alright, so you don't want Zach Smith dating your daughter. What does that have to do with Urban Meyer? I never understood that. This guy is a master motivator. This guy has been incredibly successful wherever he's been. Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, OSU, and he's going to do the same thing in Jacksonville. And I'll say this. I've said this a million times. But it's never been more true than now. Since Meyer is going to take over as Jaguars head coach, and since they don't have a GM in place, you know that Meyer's going to have a lot of say over front office decisions. Urban Meyer is very heavily connected to OSU. I promise you, there is a package out there that would convince Meyer to move down one spot. The Jets can take Lawrence. The Jaguars can take Fields. Everyone walks away happy. I really could see that happening. Moving on now to the Falcons, coming very close to hiring Terry Fontenot as their next GM. Nothing's finalized yet, according to Ian Rappaport. But he is the guy. Fontenot is an incredibly well-respected football mind. He's been with the Saints for 18 seasons. He worked his way up from being a pro scout to being the director of pro scouting. And then he became assistant GM for pro personnel. This guy knows the NFL inside and out. And to make matters even better, the Falcons were able to poach him from a division rival. Like I said, Fontenot is very well respected. He's been linked to a bunch of GM jobs all throughout this process. He interviewed with the Broncos, the Lions, and the Jaguars. The Falcons were able to get him. Give them full credit. I really think he's going to do a good job. The last story to talk about is the Lions hiring Brad Holmes as their new GM. He will get a 5-year deal to leave the Rams. With the Rams, he was their director of college scouting. This is a guy who was a big reason why the Rams took Aaron Donald and Jared Goff. He's been with the Rams since 2003. He started out as an intern in their PR department. And he worked his way up to be in charge of Rams scouting. And the Rams have done an excellent job of drafting recently. Cooper Kupp, John Johnson, Taylor Rapp, Cam Akers. Holmes is an incredibly smart guy. He's also very active in social justice reform. That's going to endear him to some players. In every facet, this move makes sense. I hate to be so complimentary about everything, but it's the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. These teams are getting smart. Tomorrow, I'm going to make my picks for the 4 NFL playoff games that are going to take place over the weekend, along with breaking down anything that happens in sports. You know the drill. You're a good listener. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that I'd run my club like a pawn shop. I'd buy, I'd trade, and I'd sell.